Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everybody. Today we're taking a look at something that's really changing the game in medicine. How we get drugs into the body. We're not talking your everyday pills and shots. This is next level stuff.
Exactly. We're going to be diving into some seriously advanced drug delivery systems. Think nanocarriers, liposomes, even implantable devices.
You've given me some fascinating research on this, like cutting-edge scientific papers and even regulatory documents. So our mission today, well, it's pretty simple, really. We want to break down the science behind these new technologies, understand how they work, why they're better than the old ways of doing things, and how they're already being used in the real world to help patients.
And we're going to do this in a way that everyone can understand, whether you're a scientist yourself or just curious about the future of medicine.
Right. But before we get into the real cool stuff, it might be useful to start with the basics. Why do we even need these fancy new systems? What's wrong with the way we deliver drugs now? I mean, we've been using pills and injections for ages.
Sure. Um, well, the main problem with traditional methods like pills and injections is they just kind of spread the drug everywhere in the body.
Like a shotgun approach.
Yeah, exactly. They get into the bloodstream and go everywhere. The problem is this can lead to side effects because the drug ends up in places where it's not needed, affecting healthy tissues and organs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you often need to take higher doses or take the drug more often to make sure enough of it reaches the actual problem area.
Exactly. And that's where these advanced drug delivery systems come in. They offer a much more targeted and controlled approach, and this is going to be the focus of our conversation today.
Okay, so let's dive into the specifics, starting with nanocarriers. Now, the prefix nano always throws me off. We're talking really, really tiny here, right? What's the basic science behind how these nanocarriers work?
Well, nanocarriers are incredibly small particles, engineered at the molecular level to carry drugs directly to where they're needed. They're often made from a combination of materials like polymers and lipids.
Polymers and lipids, that sounds like a strange mix.
It's actually a pretty clever strategy. See, polymers can give the nanocarrier structure and control how quickly the drug is released, while lipids help the nanocarrier interact with some membranes.
So it's like building a tiny, customizable delivery vehicle.
Exactly. And their size, being so small, it allows them to do things that traditional drug delivery methods just can't.
Speaking of size, I remember reading about something called the enhanced permeation and retention effect, or EPR effect, especially for cancer treatment. What did that mean exactly?
Yeah, that's a really cool phenomenon. You see, in a lot of disease tissues, particularly tumors, the blood vessels are kind of leaky and disorganized. They're not as tightly packed as they are in healthy tissue, and the lymphatic drainage in these areas isn't as efficient either. Now, because nanocarriers are so tiny, they can actually slip through these leaky blood vessels and into the tumor. And once they're in there, they tend to hang around for a while because they're not easily cleared away.
So it's like they have a VIP pass to get into the tumor, and then they just set up camp.
Yeah, kind of. This is the EPR effect in action. It allows a higher concentration of the drug to build up inside the tumor while minimizing exposure to healthy cells.
That's incredible. It's like delivering a knockout punch directly to the cancer cells without harming the rest of the body. You actually shared a paper that had a really cool example of this, something about nanoparticles targeting a specific protein called CD98 to treat colitis in mice. What's the story there?
Ah, yes, that was a fascinating study. It's a perfect example of how targeted therapy can work at the molecular level. In this case, the researchers created nanoparticles with antibodies on their surface, specifically designed to bind to the CD98 protein.
Okay, so CD98 is like a beacon for the nanoparticles to home in on.
Right. CD98 is found in larger amounts in inflamed tissues, like those affected by colitis. The nanoparticles were also loaded with something called small interfering RNA, or siRNA.
What does siRNA do?
It's like a gene silencer. It basically turns off the activity of the CD98 gene, which is thought to play a role in the inflammation. So when these nanoparticles are injected, they find their way to the inflamed colon, latch onto the CD98 protein, and release the siRNA, and the result: reduced inflammation in the mice.
Wow, that's incredible. It's almost like sending a tiny surgeon in there to turn off the inflammation at its source.
Yeah.
But being so tiny, doesn't working at the nanoscale raise concerns about safety? I mean, one of your sources mentioned possible toxicity issues with nanoparticles.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. You're right, because nanoparticles are so small, we need to be extra careful about their potential effects on the body. We have to look at everything. what they're made of, their size and shape, the charge on their surface, and even how they break down and are cleared from the body.
So it's not just about making them work, it's about making sure they're safe.
Exactly. Researchers are working hard to address these safety concerns. They're looking at whether nanoparticles might build up in certain organs, cause unwanted immune reactions, or interfere with normal cell processes. This careful research is vital to ensure that any nanoparticles used in medicine are safe and effective.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move on to another type of advanced drug delivery system. Liposomes. When I hear liposome, I think of tiny bubbles of fat. Am I on the right track?
You're pretty close, actually. Liposomes are essentially tiny sacs made from lipids, which are fats. They have a structure very similar to the membranes that surround our own cells.
So they're like tiny little cells themselves.
In a way, yes. They have these double layers of fat molecules called lipid bilayers, and they form a sphere with a watery core. This structure is what makes them so versatile. They can carry water-soluble drugs in their core and fat-soluble drugs within the lipid layers.
So they're like a two-for-one deal for drug delivery. What other advantages do liposomes offer?
Well, for starters, they can significantly improve the solubility of drugs. You see, a lot of drugs have trouble dissolving in water, which makes them hard for the body to absorb. Liposomes can encapsulate these drugs, making them easier to disperse and absorb.
Like hiding a pill inside a spoonful of peanut butter.
Yeah, kind of. But liposomes offer other benefits, too. They protect the drug from being broken down too quickly by enzymes in the bloodstream. And, similar to nanocarriers, their surface can be modified with targeting molecules to deliver the drug to specific cells or tissues.
So we could design liposomes to specifically target cancerous cells or areas of inflammation, just like those CD98 targeting nanoparticles we discussed.
You got it. Liposomes are already being used clinically for various applications, especially in cancer and fungal infections. Liposomal formulations of these drugs often work better and have fewer side effects than traditional formulations.
So they're already out there making a difference. All right, let's move on to the last type of advanced drug delivery system we're discussing today. Implantable devices. This sounds like a way to deliver drugs over a long period. How do these devices work?
Implantable devices are pretty much what they sound like. They're devices that are surgically implanted in the body to release medication over an extended period, sometimes months or even years.
So it's like having a tiny pharmacy inside you.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it. There are different types of implantable devices. Some use a reservoir filled with the drug and a membrane that lets the drug slowly seep out. Others use a biodegradable polymer matrix that gradually breaks down and releases the drug over time. And there are even implantable pumps that can be programmed to release the drug at specific intervals.
Wow, that's pretty high tech. What are the main benefits of using these implantable devices?
There are several. For one, they drastically reduce how often you need to take medication. This can be a huge improvement for people with chronic conditions who have to take medication every day. Imagine only needing an implant once a year instead of taking pills every day.
That would be amazing.
Right.
Mm.
Implantable devices also provide a very steady and consistent release of the drug, avoiding those ups and downs you get with traditional methods. And because they can deliver the drug directly to the site where it's needed, they can reduce side effects by limiting the drug's exposure to the rest of the body.
That makes sense. I imagine this would be especially beneficial for powerful drugs that have a lot of potential side effects.
Precisely. For example, you can imagine an implant placed right next to a tumor that delivers a high dose of chemotherapy directly to the cancer cells, minimizing damage to healthy tissues.
Now, our source material didn't delve into specific examples of implantable devices, but I'm thinking things like insulin pumps for diabetes or contraceptive implants. Are those good examples?
Absolutely. Those are great examples of implantable devices that are already being used successfully to manage chronic conditions and deliver hormones over extended periods. There are also implantable devices that deliver pain medication directly to the spinal cord. The potential applications are vast and expanding all the time.
Okay, so we've covered the three main types of advanced drug delivery systems: nanocarriers, liposomes, and implantable devices. Let's circle back to those advantages over traditional methods that we mentioned earlier: improved efficacy, reduced side effects, and targeted therapy. Can we break down how those are achieved with these specific systems in mind?
Sure. So when we talk about improved efficacy, we're basically saying that these new systems can deliver the drug more effectively to the right place, allowing you to use a lower overall dose. Think back to that colitis example with the CD98 targeting nanoparticles. Delivering the siRNA directly to the inflamed colon was much more effective and required less drug overall than giving a traditional drug that would spread throughout the whole body.
Right, it's all about precision and hitting the target without wasting medication or causing unnecessary side effects.
And that's exactly how these systems lead to fewer side effects. By minimizing exposure of healthy tissues to the drug, you reduce the chance of those tissues being harmed.
So targeted delivery keeps the drug focused on the problem area, like a laser beam instead of a floodlight.
Perfect analogy. And the concept of targeted therapy really shines here. We're talking about designing drug delivery systems that can seek out and interact with specific cells or tissues, like those nanoparticles honing in on the CD98 protein in colitis.
It's incredible to think that we can design therapies with that level of precision. Okay, so we've talked about cancer and inflammatory diseases, but what other areas hold promise for these advanced drug delivery systems? Are there other diseases that could benefit from this technology?
Oh, absolutely. While our source is focused on cancer and inflammation, the potential applications go way beyond those areas. Researchers are looking at using these systems for infectious diseases, delivering antimicrobials directly to the site of infection. And there's a lot of interest in using them for neurological disorders, potentially helping drugs cross the blood-brain barrier, which is notoriously difficult to penetrate.
Wow, that would be a game changer for treating conditions like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's.
It could be. And these systems are also being explored in regenerative medicine, delivering growth factors or genetic materials to specific cells to help repair and regrow tissues. It's a really exciting field with new applications emerging all the time.
This all sounds incredibly promising. But let's talk about the practical side of getting these innovations to patients. I'm guessing the regulatory process for these advanced systems is pretty complex.
Oh, definitely. Especially when these systems are classified as medical devices, which is often the case for implantable devices or even software that controls drug release. They fall under the watchful eye of agencies like the US FDA, specifically their Center for Device and Radiological Health, or CDRH. These devices have to go through rigorous testing and meet strict safety standards before they can be used on patients.
So it's not just about developing the technology, it's about making sure it's safe and effective for people. And with AI becoming more prevalent in healthcare, especially in areas like software as a medical device or SAMD, are there specific regulatory hurdles for that, especially when it comes to controlling drug delivery?
Yeah, you've hit on a really important point. AI in healthcare is a rapidly evolving field, and regulations are constantly being updated to keep pace. When it comes to SAM and Ds, agencies like the FDA are focusing on things like how the software is classified based on its risk level, how it's designed and developed, whether it works on its own or with other medical devices, cybersecurity to protect patient data, how it's used in clinical settings, and the specific algorithms it uses.
And of course, they want to make sure that AI-powered medical devices are transparent, explainable, and most importantly, safe for patients.
Exactly. It's a complex landscape, but having clear regulations is crucial to ensure that these technologies are used responsibly and ethically.
Okay, so we've talked about the technology, the potential applications, and the regulatory landscape. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about how these advanced delivery systems affect the way drugs behave inside the body. One of the sources mentioned something called pharmacokinetics, specifically drug distribution and protein binding. Can you explain what that means?
Sure. Pharmacokinetics is basically the study of what happens to a drug from the moment it enters the body until it leaves. It looks at how the drug is absorbed, distributed, metabolized, or broken down, and excreted. Now, these advanced delivery systems can actually change how these processes work.
Really? How so?
Well, for example, if a drug is encapsulated in a nanoparticle, it might be distributed differently in the body compared to the drug on its own. It might stay in the bloodstream longer, or it might accumulate in specific tissues thanks to those targeting molecules we talked about earlier.
And I remember reading that drugs that bind strongly to proteins in the blood tend to stay in the bloodstream and have a limited distribution. How do these new delivery systems affect that?
That's an important point. You see, only the unbound portion of a drug can really interact with its target and have its intended effect. Advanced delivery systems can actually change how much of a drug is bound to proteins. For example, a nanoparticle might shield the drug from binding to proteins, making more of it available to do its job. Or the delivery system itself might bind to proteins, which could change how the drug is distributed.
So it's not just about getting the drug to the right place, it's also about making sure it's in the right form to work properly.
Exactly. That's why pharmacokinetic studies are so important for these new drug delivery systems. They help us understand exactly how the drug and its delivery system behave inside the body, so we can design them better and figure out the best doses to use.
Okay, last but not least, let's talk about the manufacturing of these advanced drug delivery systems. They seem pretty complex to make. What are some of the key considerations for manufacturing and quality control to ensure consistency and reliability?
Manufacturing and quality control are super important for any drug product, but even more so for these advanced systems because they're so complex. We need to make sure that every batch of nanocarriers, liposomes, or implantable devices is made exactly the same way and has the same properties. The right size, the right amount of drug, the right release rate, and so on. This requires really tight control over the manufacturing process and rigorous quality checks at every stage.
I imagine there's little room for error when you're dealing with such tiny components in complex formulations.
Right. And that's where the concept of quality by design comes in. It's all about understanding the product and the manufacturing process inside and out, figuring out what factors can affect quality, and designing the process to make sure every batch meets the same high standards. This helps ensure that patients receive a safe and effective product every time.
So to wrap things up, it's clear that we're witnessing a major shift in how we deliver drugs to the body. These advanced drug delivery systems offer incredible potential for improving patient care.
Absolutely. We've gone from a one-size-fits-all approach to a more personalized and targeted strategy, and that's a huge step forward.
And the coolest part is that we're seeing these advancements translate into real-world benefits for patients, like improved efficacy, fewer side effects, and the possibility of targeting therapies with incredible precision.
And remember, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The field of drug delivery is constantly evolving, and who knows what amazing breakthroughs await us in the future.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a truly exciting time to be following these developments. So as we end our deep dive today, here's a final thought for our listeners to ponder. With these advanced systems poised to revolutionize how we treat diseases, what broader impacts might they have on the future of healthcare? How will they change the way we think about disease management and patient care?
It's a fascinating question, and one that deserves careful consideration as these technologies continue to advance.
A big thank you to everyone for tuning into this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and engaging.
And as always, keep those questions coming and stay curious at the world around you.
Until next time, take care and stay informed.